Alexa, Juliana Ard, welcome to Lingofest. Thank you for making
Thank
the time. Uh, you're at the Washington Post. You guys are always busy. You have deadlines and so forth. So I do appreciate you making the time to speak with me.
thank you for having me.
Oh, you bet. Well, let me start. Actually, let me start because and I mentioned this to you. So I just wanna. I love language. I love words. Your full name is Alexa Juliana Ard. Is that how we say it?
Yes.
Okay. And I want to focus on the last name, actually, Ard, because I speak Arabic, and that name or that word Ard, or Ard in Arabic means earth, means ground, um, and so actually the first time when I saw your name when we started engaging, that's the first thing that struck me as opposed to your first name. Just so that you know. Um,
That's so cool. Yeah. I mean, names are interesting in the fact that like it does tie you to like history and heritage. And if you meet other people that feel some kind of connection with like your name and their own experience, then yeah, you could have a connection right off the bat that way.
and it's a good connection. Like art is like it's a positive thing.
Yeah.
And then the actually the word Alexa, the name Alexa itself has meaning, right? Maybe you can tell the audience because you've dug into that.
Yeah, actually, because it's a shorter form of Alexander, which means defender of mankind. And I wanted to include this in the story, but because, it wasn't exactly like, the name Alexander, right? It's just a shortened version of that. So they were like, well, we don't know if we want to get into like, including all that just because of the shortened version of it. But for me it means defender, and so I think that's something that's really interesting to the story too, because you have all these people who are kind of having to stand up for their name and defend their name, and so it's kind of ironic.
Yeah, no, definitely, and and I think this issue itself, I think, is the tip of the iceberg, so to speak, of issues to come. Right? I think it's just an aspect um, of the fact that we need to protect many things that are human from things that are not human, that are manufactured, that are machines, right? And so this sort of blurring of the lines needs defenders. And so it is, like you said, ironic or apropos, whatever, that I think the first issue and people look back, because I think in the future, this is going to be a prominent issue, this thing about robots and humans blurring. I think this moment will be looked back as hey, it's interesting that this debate was going on about the name itself. Um,
Mhm.
so, well, I don't want to reduce you to an Alexa. So I want to talk about you first, all right, as a human being,
Yeah.
because it's important for folks to know that Alexa is when you encounter a person who's called Alexa, it's not hey, it's an instantiation of the Alexa in the Amazon, a human version of that. Let's poke at her or right or and things like that.
Mhm.
So first of all, you are a foreign video editor at the Washington Post,
Right.
right? So what does a foreign video editor at the Washington Post do? What do you do? What's your day like?
Yeah, so I cover world news. I wake up in the morning, open my laptop, and I get caught up on everything, that's happened overnight. We look at, a lot of like the big things happening, but then we also like dig deeper and look at things that maybe people aren't realizing is happening in these other countries, and try to provide an on the ground perspective, because we do have correspondents in these places too. So I do work with the foreign correspondents, and because my role is video, a lot of my responsibilities include directing the correspondence. Hey, like for your story, you're writing print, but here's how we can include video.
Mhm.
So I can direct them like, hey, when you're out at this rally, when you're filming, try to get these shots. And then they send it to me, and then it's my job to have that go in the story and make sure it adds to the story and people can see what's happening and not
Mm.
just read about it.
Yeah.
I also hire international video freelancers, so people who specifically do video, And I love just being able to like find this like talent around the world too, and get to work with them and just learn about a whole new culture. It's really interesting. It's a really exciting job, and I'm very fortunate to have it.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. I started getting excited as I was I was always listening to you and was visualizing the day. So you're engaging all these journalists with all these freelancers, right? There's interesting stories going on. I'm sure you've probably done well, I mean, you're the video person, so you do you probably touch most of the stories out there, right? That are that are and the Washington Post has good presence, internationally, right? They have a good they cover,
Mhm.
right? They travel and all that. They're on the ground, right?
Yeah, we have correspondents all over the world, all different regions, you know, Canada, Mexico, Britain, all over the world. I couldn't even,
Yeah,
and then they're always moving too. So maybe they
right.
might, like we have the Nairobi bureau chief, sure, but he could be the next day, in a different part,
Yeah,
in a different country in Africa. Like he could be
yeah,
in South Africa the next day, so they're always on the move. And so we are constantly having like coverage in all these different areas. And that's, I mean, it's really important because me being here on my laptop, that can't provide the same perspective as someone who's actually on the ground and
yeah,
living there. So
yeah. Yeah, that's really exciting. And so when you engage with these folks who are writing stories, and they're telling you, hey, this is what I'm doing. Do they describe to you what's going on, and you help them, like, the best kind of video you should shoot is this? Like, what's that conversation like? I'm just curious.
yeah, so for instance, recently we did something where we had correspondents send us an Omicron like dispatch,
Mm,
basically. So they, in their different regions of the world, they sent a video saying, this is the state of the pandemic here. This is what life is like. This
mhm.
is, I landed here on this day. I had to quarantine for 10 days in a hotel. So that our direction is like, okay, yeah, like if this is what you're experiencing, like send us a selfie video of you explaining this, and then send us some B-roll footage, so like shots of what's going on around you, to show what it looks like. And it's also really important to make sure that they hold the camera still, and
Right.
no crazy like shaky
So you give
shots.
them guidance like that as well. I see.
Yeah, so like
Okay.
even like technical
Right.
feedback too, we try to like direct them because we want to deliver like quality, storytelling to our audience.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's exciting. So you graduated from University of Nevada, Reno in 2016, right?
Mhm.
And here you are like 5, 6 years later, you're at the Washington Post. That's just let me tell you that that's impressive. That you must be really talented at what you do.
Thank
So
you.
congratulations. That's not something a lot of people can do. 5, 6 years out of college and boom, you're at the Washington Post. So are you enjoying your job there? I'm sure you are, right?
Yeah, it's great. And I will say that one of the things I really admire about the Washington Post is that they believe in young people, and they
Mm,
don't, like,
mhm.
never have I felt like less than or anything because of my age or my experience level. Like they put full confidence in you, and they hired you for a reason, and you go through a really intense interview process to get this job. So by the time you have it, it's like, okay, we believe in you. Now go do it. Like, no, your age is not a limit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, well, let me share this with you. One of the most favorite movies is Taxi Driver, and the other one is All the President's Men, right? Bob Woodward and
Mhm.
Carl Bernstein. Was it 1976, 75 movie? I watch it, like, I don't know, every 3 months. I just sit down and watch it. I don't know why. And those guys were really young, right? So I
Yeah.
think sort of that tradition goes way back. Probably Ben Bradley, right? The late Ben Bradley probably believed in young folks, because he also got got to be a editor at a young age. I think he believed in youth, and he believed that they bring energy, and and a fresh way of looking at things. So yeah, so probably you are exactly where you need to be.
Yeah.
um, so like personally, I have very strong feelings about the importance um, of reporters, investigative reporters, right? People who report the news. And I think the last 4 years, I think their importance was sort of just became more obvious, if it was not obvious. The fact that folks, people, we had situational people who were doing things. If reporters didn't report them, we wouldn't know, and they were grave things. So you are a journalist. Um, what would you say to a young person who is, I don't know, in their, sophomore maybe or junior year in high school, and they feel like they want to be journalists and they're part of the paper there in their high school? Um, what advice would you give them going into college and beyond? What kind of things did you learn that you wish you knew when you were in high school? Because you're involved in high school, you were involved in journalism, right?
Yeah, my first journalism class was
Yeah,
in high school.
high school, right? Um,
Actually, middle school, I think. I think I was like in eighth grade, maybe. I was very, yeah,
So you
very
knew
young.
what you wanted to be, more or less, right?
I knew what I wanted to be since I was 11 years old. Like I knew I wanted to be a journalist because I actually grew up playing basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved basketball. Like everything was basketball. I wanted to be in the WNBA. I played like competitively, like travel teams, like year
Oh wow.
round. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was eat, sleep, and breathe basketball. And I read a book about Cheryl Miller and how she had like knee injuries, but she
Mm-hmm.
became a sports commentator, and that was her way of staying part of the game.
Mm,
And I actually had ACL tear when I was
mm,
14,
mm.
and consistent meniscus tears when I was 14. And even after that, I kept tearing my meniscus. And so it just wasn't, the game wasn't the same when you're like
Yeah.
not able to play like 100%. Like you're not able to like give it your all. Like some people, everybody's body is different, and some
Yep.
people can come back. But for me, I couldn't. And so I thought, well, I could do sports journalism and I could still be part of the game that way. And so for 2 years of college, like that's all I did was sports journalism.
Mm,
And my professors are the ones that like pushed me to kind of like get out of my comfort zone and do something different. And
mm.
I think I became a better journalist as a result of like branching out and doing different things.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what would you tell a youngster if you were to give them one or two tips about how to to succeed or at least to grow?
Um, what would I tell them? Let's see. There's so much.
Like the comfort zone probably is good advice, right? That your professors push you to do things that,
Mhm.
right? Maybe one of those. Yeah. What else? Give me one.
the the field is constantly changing and evolving,
Yeah.
and you kind of just have to be like a rubber band and like evolve with it and take different shapes and different forms and be open to like trying new things and reporting on different topics. And also I would say I think my biggest advice, especially from the Alexa story that I did, is sometimes you are the best person to like tell your story, because I think a lot of times we worry about bias and stuff, and that's
Mm.
a reason
Mm-hmm.
why for a long time I didn't want to do the story.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was hoping that like someone on the tech team would like pick it up, and because it's not really something enjoyable for me to like dwell on and like think about and have to talk about constantly. It's not comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But still I felt like because I'm living it, I could tell the story best and shape like the tone of it best. So my biggest advice probably be like, yeah, sometimes you are the best person to like tell your story, and don't worry about like bias, especially if you're like focusing on other people who are also experiencing it. Then because you're living it, you could be like the best person to tell that story.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's interesting because you are a foreign, what's the title exactly? The foreign video editor. And you did this story, which is not related to that. And so you went out of your comfort zone in that way, right? So that's interesting. And also, I think I like actually I believe in in the ability of a good journalist to do something that they care about, but do it in a way that is not like biased, right? I think that takes a
Mhm.
lot of skill, and I think sort of you going there, it feels like is like trying to, trying to pull that off. And I think you definitely did pull that off. I think the story came out where you came out authentic, right? But you were not bashing any side. You're presenting the facts for folks to, to understand the situation, and sort of you leveraged your insights, your personal insight. You leveraged it without sort of tipping the balance in, in the wrong way. So let's talk about that story then. Because I think that's an important, I think, watershed for this issue. The fact that a good long story was written about it. And it's an interesting perspective, right? Not not just factual, but factual plus a lot of emotion in it. Folks who that you interviewed, they had things to say, and they had things to say that touched their lives directly, and in a meaningful and important way. I guess my question to you is, um, how did you walk me through the process by which you arrived to the point where you're like, I want to do it, and then after that, how did you convince your editor or editors over there to like, hey, okay, you can do it, you should do it, let's go for it.
Yeah. Um, and it's funny, I'll say before we start on that, I kind of argue that it is an international story, because as you could see in
Mm,
my story, there was people from all over the world
yeah,
featured
that's
in
a good
it,
point. That's
which
true.
show,
Mm,
yeah, it kind of shows like, Amazon's power really, and
yep.
just their reach globally. But and how powerful marketing and branding is. But yeah, for me, at the beginning when this thing came out, it wasn't like too bad. It was just kind of like, okay, yeah, like it has my name, like so what? Like let's move on kind of a
Hmm.
thing.
Yeah.
And but then it just became like people were treating me like really differently. And I'm like, this like I kind of just missed like having normal like human interactions, right? I mean, there's a human behind the name, right? No matter what name you have, there's a human behind it who has
Yeah.
like feelings and stuff and a story.
Hmm.
I think the most hurtful part was when people would respond to me like my name was a flaw or like something to be ashamed of. Like if
Mm,
I introduce myself and someone responds like, oh no, or like,
mm,
that's your name? Your name's really Alexa? Like,
mm,
it doesn't feel good. It makes you feel like your name is something to like be ashamed of. And like, especially looking at the data and how like the name really like fell off, it's
yeah.
almost like, wow, like my like this quality about me, like my name, that's something that no parent wants for like their children now. That's something they
Mm,
like run away from.
hmm. Hmm.
Which I understand, but it's kind of like, wow, like it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
And so yeah, by 2019, it was like every week, like getting comments and stuff like that. And I think everyone has like a limit. And so like in 2020, actually, like, yeah, like 2 years ago exactly, like I had someone like um say something like really like inappropriate to me, which is
Mm,
when I started going by like Juliana, and I started like seeking out community. And once I found the community, I was just like, wow, like some of their stories are even more like
hmm.
powerful, and like just like, I don't know, I felt like they needed to be like heard. Like I want to provide like a platform for like women and girls to like feel seen and heard, and like like make them feel like validated, like you're not crazy, like other people are experiencing this all over the world. And especially when I was continuing to hear like stories about women being asked not to say their name, or like being called like a different name without their permission.
Hmm.
um it it was like, wow, like this is really having like not good impacts on people, and I think people should hear about this. And I will say, like, before I started the story, I did have like I had a trip back home where some uncomfortable experiences with my name like happened again,
Hmm.
which I had kind of had a break from. being in, because I'm from Las Vegas, but being in the DC area, when I started introducing myself by Juliana, it
Mm-hmm.
kind of made you forget about it. Like, oh, okay, I have like these normal interactions
Yeah.
back, and like
Mm-hmm.
things are normal again. But then going back home, people calling me Alexa, being at a friend's place where you don't know any of their friends. And
Mm-hmm.
I went into it being like, just call me like Juliana to your new friends that I don't know, but they had the device there. And so,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't even know that going into it. And so the whole time you're just hearing, Alexa, Alexa, like I'm screaming at it. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like,
And you're
it's still
turning.
my,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's still my name. It's still something I respond to. And it
Of
just
course.
doesn't like feel good to feel like someone's like screaming at you and they're like standing right in front of your face.
Because the brain, like the, your brain is wired to listen for the name, right? It's very hard to
Mm-hmm.
undo that. And so
Yeah.
you just react.
So,
Yeah. Go ahead.
yeah. So with all that buildup, by the time I came back to DC after that trip, it was June, and I was like, I'm doing it. Like, and so I just started like reaching out to these people I had like connected with online through like Twitter and Facebook. And I told them, hey, like, this is my idea. I don't know if the Washington Post is going to like accept it or not, but I want to like put this pitch together. And
Mhm.
so I kind of just like went for it, and I interviewed all these people, put an outline together. And then after like 2 months of reporting, like in addition to all the work I was still doing like my
Yeah.
daily
Yeah.
world
Uh-huh.
news responsibilities, but like
Yep.
when I had time, I
Mhm.
would do an interview, or after I would work late to like do an interview. And so by the time I pitched it, I had done like probably like 30 or 40 interviews or something
Mhm.
crazy like that.
Mhm.
And I pitched it, and they were like really impressed because I had put a lot of work into it, and obviously people were being impacted. A lot of people were being impacted. I mean, there's over 130,000 women and girls in the US alone with this name. And my story was featuring people from outside of just the United States, like
Yeah.
Mexico,
Yep.
Europe, Canada. So yeah, then I got the green light, and it was my first time doing like a written piece for the Post. And it was like really cool because I got like a whole team like behind me.
Mhm.
So like we had like a designer on the project, a photo editor, copy editors. So and then we had, an editor. I had my editor who is also my senior producer, but then I also had another editor, Suzanne Goldenberg, who is very like experienced and accomplished. And so to have someone like that, like believe in your story, who's been
Yeah.
in journalism for, a long time, that was like really cool. Cause it's like,
Like
wow,
it's
like,
hey, this
okay,
is real. Like they're taking me seriously.
yeah, like they believe me, right?
They
Because like
believe me.
for so many years, like you try to tell people this and they're just kind of like, haha, like,
Mhm.
that's funny, that's cute, but they don't actually like get like the deeper impacts of it. Because like a name is something that's going to carry you in life and in death,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yep.
When you're
Yep.
physically not here, Ahmed, people are
Yeah.
still going to talk about
Talk
you, and your
about you. Yeah.
name is going to be like that
Exactly.
physical
Yeah.
thing of you continuing to live on.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so so you pitched to your editors and they said this is great. They believed in the story and in you. And the team that was assembled to get this story out. Did how much did you tell them about? Did you like sit down with them and give them the full context and why this is important? Like how much do these folks have to buy into it, as opposed to, okay, what do you want me to do? You want me to find you some pictures, whatever? Like are there like, do they get to understand deeply what this is all about? I'm sure they do, right?
Yeah, so I think like again, like if you are going through something like this and you're just like, okay, this is happening to me, like people kind of like take it like, okay,
Yeah.
like, but when you have like all these like women and girls, like, because when I
Yep.
went to like, it might have been the first or second meeting, probably the first one, I feel like I had like a document with like the characters, and
Hmm.
I took like a picture from like their social media. And so I had their picture with their name. And so
Hmm.
seeing like all the women and girls
Yeah.
like during that meeting, I think they were like, oh,
Yeah, this
okay,
is
this is
real.
like,
It's not a
yeah,
joke. This is not a joke. Yeah. Yep.
especially with the stories when they're like having like people being asked not to say their name or like being called like a different name, like just to prioritize like a robot. And it's like, I don't know, like Amazon, I feel like they respond in kind of like gaslighting ways because they're like, oh, just change the wake word. But it's like not a lot of people like know they can do that. Amazon doesn't market it as that. They aggressively market it as Alexa. And so it's like people aren't going to do that. They want to just take it out of the box and use it, right? And they
Yeah.
have every right to. Like if you buy a product, you have every right to use it how you want to use it. So really the responsibility is on Amazon, I feel like. But it is like disheartening when I hear like 7 out of the 28 women and girls named Alexa tell me the exact same story of people don't want them saying their name or being called something else because their name is an inconvenience. I mean, that's a quarter of the people I interviewed. That's a lot.
Right. No, no, yeah. And I think I was poking at your staff's reaction, because I think I've seen this where as people go beyond the initial haha reaction, and they actually start thinking about it, or they start putting themselves in the shoes of the person. I think as soon as they start doing that, they realize that this may look and sound trivial or not a big deal from afar. But if you are at the center of it, if you're the person whose name is that, then it's a big deal, right? Like if you see somebody with a cast, okay, I've seen a lot of people with casts, but that person's life is like they can't do many things. They're in pain, right? And so
Yeah.
one has to, it's a human nature is like that. I think you start by not empathizing until you get to know the person, right? Until you get to put yourself in their shoes. So I think what you're doing is exactly along those lines. Like we're trying to make people understand beyond just hey numbers, 130,000, because then they're like, oh, there are bigger problems in this world, right? Kind of a reaction. But as soon I've seen this, I say it again, as soon as they start thinking, I think, which is a good thing, they start taking it seriously. Yeah. Now, as far as Amazon's response, I wanted to actually, I want to say this because I don't get a lot of opportunities to say it. So, as I said to you, my one of my favorite movies is All the President's Men, and my favorite line there is when Ben Bradley says it's a non-denial denial. Right? Remember that, right? It's non-denial denial, meaning they're like, no, 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 no. So they don't deny the facts; they just make noise. I think Amazon is doing a non-response response, not really a response to say people can change the word. That's not the point. The point is that out of the box, like you said, it comes with that, and so everybody, and they market it. They never address the point of marketing it, right? That
Mm-hmm.
the whole point is you have commercials that say Alexa and reduce the
Mm-hmm.
person, that names it. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
your editors. Let me ask you a question that I think a lot of people who are watching um, are thinking about, is the fact that you work for the Washington Post. Washington Post is owned by Jeff Bezos, right? Does the fact that Jeff Bezos own the Post, does that influence anybody's thinking about what stories to cover or what to poke at in any way?
No, we don't. I think Jeffrey Fowler, he covers tech, and he has like this line that he says about, like, yeah, we're owned by Jeff Bezos, but I still, examine tech with the same critical eye, or I still report on tech with the same critical eye. It doesn't influence like our reporting and being transparent and holding tech accountable. So it's like, that's why, I thought doing this story for the Post would be even more interesting, because we are owned by Jeff Bezos, but it's like, we don't let that influence like what we cover, or what we like report on. I mean, our job is to hold people accountable. And so I feel like that's what my story is doing. It's holding people accountable, right? I mean, they say they care about user experience and customer feedback, but they're not taking any action to show that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's interesting. Uh, and so when you guys cover, when somebody covers Amazon, I'm sure they put a disclaimer that, hey, by the way, the Washington Post is owned by Amazon,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Right.
every
Yeah.
single time. Yeah,
Every
even
single time.
my story has that in it too.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And I feel like Jeff must be particular about his name too, because I remember in my story initially it says like the Washington Post is owned by Jeffrey P. Bezos. And then before it published, it was changed to Jeff Bezos. So I'm like, okay, well, obviously your name's important to you, it's also important to other people, their names.
That's